about to listen to a message from Root River Community Church. If you live in the Rushford, Minnesota area and do not have a church home, we would love to have you at one of our Sunday morning services. For more information about our church, visit our website at rootriver.org. We hope and pray that God speaks to you through this message.
Exodus chapter 3, verse 1. This is part of our series, I Think I Am Insecure. I think I am insecure. And the word should be up on the screen. It says this. Now Moses, he was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Verse 2 says, There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. Verse 3 says, So Moses thought, this is what I would think, I will go over there and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses, God said, and Moses responded by saying, Here I am. Verse 5 says, the Lord said, Do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses, he hid his face from the Lord because he was afraid to look at God. Skip down to verse 10. It says this, I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? Verse 12 says this, And God said, I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this very mountain. So I want to add a couple points to this message series called I Think I Am Insecure. And the first point is this. Insecurities, they can be situational. They can be situational. Sometimes you can feel so secure in who you are and what you're doing, and then you take yourself out of that position, out of that situation, and all of a sudden these new insecurities start coming your way. I want to share a brief story with you. Throughout this series, I've talked to a number of people, and we've just kind of shared stories about being insecure, compared stories. And after the first week of talking about our insecurities, Bruce Bunky and I struck up a conversation about different insecurities. Here's a picture of Bruce and Jenny and their kids, Michaela, Caitlin, and Owen. They go to the church. And so anyways, here's the story that Bruce shared with me. And it's kind of a Valentine's Day story, so I thought it fit really well with this morning. But Bruce was really insecure when it came to asking Jenny out. They were 17 years old, roughly, at the time. They'd known each other for a long time. Bruce had feelings for Jenny for several weeks or a couple months, and he had several opportunities to tell her that he liked her and to ask her out on a date. But each time, he chickened out because he was insecure. And haven't we all been there, guys? Like, that's me. You know, when I was trying to pursue Krista, I was very insecure. Sometimes in those situations, our insecurities can come out. Well, Jenny worked at, is it called McGeorge's? Is that what it's called? McGeorge's. If you're familiar, if you've been in the Rushford area for a long time, McGeorge's is on the other side of town, or was on the other side of town. She worked there as a high school student, and Bruce knew that the shop closed down at 8. So Bruce devised this plan to go outside of McGeorge's and stalk Jenny until 8. And he thought, when she comes out those doors, as soon as the lights come off, I'm going to ask her. I'm going to work up the courage. I'm going to ask her. And the lights turned off, sure enough, but it was 8 o'clock and no Jenny. It was 8:05, no Jenny. 8:10, 8:15, 8:30. And he's like, is she on to me? Does she know? And all of a sudden it's 8:45. He didn't realize that, of course, she's got to clean things down and kind of close up shop. And so she walks out at 8:45, and sure enough, there's Bruce. And Bruce just asked her, Jenny, will you go on a date with me? And you know what she said? She said yes. And she said, yes, but then Bruce says, because he's so insecure about the whole thing, he's like, well, you don't have to. If you don't want to, you don't have to. And Jenny says, Bruce, I already said yes. You don't have to try to talk me out of it or anything. But we've all been there, and we've all felt that from times in different situations. And it's because insecurities, they can be situational. Sometimes we'll feel so secure. I'm sure Bruce, in other moments of his life, felt so secure. But when you took him out of those environments and into a new situation, all of a sudden he starts becoming insecure, and he starts thinking, well, what will Jenny think of me? Will she really like me? And Moses was kind of that way. If you read the story of Moses, at some points in his life, he was a secure kind of guy. If you go back to Exodus chapter 2, you see that this man, he was somewhat secure in himself. And even along going with the Valentine's theme, even along with how he asked his wife out on a first date. If you read the story in Exodus chapter 2, Moses, he leaves Egypt, and he flees from Egypt. He goes into this new area, and there's a well there, and there's these gals around the well. They're pulling water out of the well, and they're being kind of harassed by some of the locals. And so Moses, he starts to defend these women, and he starts to make all the other guys leave. He fights them off. He was secure in himself somewhat. And all of a sudden he starts asking the ladies. He's a ladies guy. He starts asking the ladies, would you care for a cup of water? He says. You know, in those kind of environments for Moses, those kind of situations, it was easy for him. But all of a sudden he finds himself talking to God through a bush. And God says, Moses, you're the guy. You're the man. You're the man of the hour. I'm going to send you back into Egypt. You're going to go up to Pharaoh, say, let my people go. And Moses says, I don't know. I don't think I'm the right guy. I think I'm the wrong guy. And he's put in this new environment, this new situation, and all of a sudden his insecurities come out. I can feel that way from time to time in different situations. If you give me a pair of downhill skis, tell you what, I grew up skiing, I feel very secure. But you put a basketball in my hand, like I talked about last week, I shut down. You know, I'm like this totally different person. All my insecurities come out. If you put me inside of this church, man, I feel secure. Like I just feel secure in my role in many different aspects of it. But you take me outside of this. So quick story. I had to go to this, or I went to this Chamber of Commerce meal. Was that, Jeff? When was that? Was that last Friday? Thursday? Whenever that was, like a week ago. And it's at the Creamery, and I like know people, but I don't like really know people. And the whole time I'm walking into this meeting, I just feel insecure. Like, what will people think of me? Like, they're probably thinking, who is this guy? And I remember feeling so insecure. I remember going through the buffet line, and I accidentally grabbed 2 spoons. And I thought to myself, because I thought the other one was a fork, but I thought to myself, well, now what am I gonna do with 2 spoons? You know, I'm sure everybody's looking at me already, and now I've got 2 spoons. And do I put it back in the dish? You can't do that in a buffet line, you know. And then I thought, I'm gonna sit down, and I'm going to pull out 2 spoons, and everybody at my table who probably doesn't already like me, they're going to think, why does this guy have 2 spoons? I mean, those kind of things that go through my mind. It's because in certain situations I feel secure, but you take me out of those situations, and all of a sudden I feel insecure. Around some people I feel very secure. Around my wife, around my parents, but you take me out of that. Sometimes I get around my father-in-law, and many of you know him. He's a great man, Dwayne Agramson. And all of a sudden, I start shutting down. I feel insecure because I just look up to Dwayne so much, and I respect him, and I want to become like him more and more. But all of a sudden, I start to feel insecure about myself. But though the situation may change, the situations that we find ourselves in, the people that we surround ourselves with, God never changes. Amen? Come on, can I hear you say amen this morning? Amen? He never changes. He says to Moses, Moses, listen to me. I'm the God of your father. I'm the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. You've heard about me all your life ever since you came into this world. You were taught about me. You heard of the promises that I gave to your forefathers. You heard of the stories of how I fulfilled those promises, how I'm always faithful to my word. I will always see you through. Though your situations may change, but you got to realize, Moses, I will never change, God says. I will always be by your side. Still, Moses, he was insecure, and it made him withdraw from his insecurities. Insecurities, they always make us either withdraw or overcompensate for our insecurities. So we see in the situation with Moses that Moses, he fled away from God. He tried to run away from his insecurities. He felt insecure about himself, and so what does he do? He tries to back out of it. Well, God, I don't know. I think you might have the wrong guy. And he starts to run away from his insecurities. And people do this all the time. People get shy, and so they're withdrawing. People, they don't show up to class on public speech day. I mean, how many of you guys did that? You know, it's public speech day, and where is everybody? Nobody's there. We're all insecure. We're withdrawing. It's reading class, and you're worried the teacher might call on you to read. I mean, how many just feel the anxiety come back about that? You're insecure. You want to withdraw from it. You wish you could just make yourself throw up so you could leave, you know. I mean, you're just so insecure. You want to do anything possible to leave the situation. Oftentimes, men, they do this in their homes. They might feel really great about themselves in their workplaces, in that kind of situation, but you take them out of that, you place them into their home, and all of a sudden, they feel insecure. They know that they should be the man of the house, leading their family spiritually, praying over their family, teaching their kids the Bible, but they don't know how to do that. And so what do? They withdraw. They shut down. Moses retreated, but there's another person in this story who I think is also insecure. It's Pharaoh. And I think Pharaoh really overcompensated for himself. Instead of running away from his insecurities, I think Pharaoh tried to just overcompensate for his insecurities. So we see, if you continue reading the story, that later Moses and Aaron go to Pharaoh, and they start to say, Pharaoh, the God of the Hebrews, he says, let my people go. We want to go worship God. And I could just see it all over Pharaoh's face, like, what? You're saying there's another God but me? And he starts to feel insecure. He starts to feel like people don't view him the way that he would like them to be viewed. And he starts to feel challenged by this God of the Hebrews. He didn't want to appear weak or frail. And so what did he do? He tried to overcompensate. He tried to put his thumb down on the people. It says in Exodus chapter 5, he said to the slave drivers, do not supply any more straw for making bricks. Make the people get it themselves. He's kind of being demanding, forceful, harsh, but still require them to make the same number of bricks as before. Don't reduce the quota. Here, let me tell you who they are. They are lazy people. That's why they're crying out, let us go and offer sacrifices to our God. Load them down with more work, Pharaoh said. Make them sweat. That will teach them. Have you ever had a boss like that? Have you ever been like that? Or you just find yourself like harsh, demanding, and you think to yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Sometimes it's because we're trying to overcompensate for our insecurities. In marriages, now women, I don't want to pick on you, okay? Don't feel picked on. Are you feeling picked on? I just want to point something out, okay? So in marriages, oftentimes, the guy, he can overcompensate, become harsh and demanding. Who wears the pants in this family? But oftentimes, the Bible even says that part of the woman's sin nature is to try to rise up and try to control the husband. It says so right in Genesis. It's part of the sin nature that is on women. And so instead of being soft and respectful and submissive, because you feel insecure about yourself, because you feel like your husband might not be loving you the way he should be, because you feel insecure about your marriage, all of a sudden you start to rise up. You start to become controlling. You start to overcompensate. You start to become harsh and demanding. And it comes back to this insecurity. You think that your marriage should be like this perfect marriage, like out of a Hallmark romance novel or something like that, where your husband, he shows up on Valentine's Day with 12 dozen bouquets of flowers, and he fits them all in his teeth. He's got them in his teeth. And he shows up at your house, and he's riding a horse, and it's a stallion, it's a white steed, and he pulls you up onto the horse, and he leads you off down the edge of some beach, and there a hot air balloon is waiting, and there you sail off into the sunset with little doves and butterflies floating all around. But that doesn't happen, right? Your husband, he can't even ride a horse, and he's afraid of heights or something like that. And so you become insecure about your marriage, and you say to your husband, just get your act together. Come on, snap out of it. Man up here. And so you start to overcompensate. You get short with him. Sometimes overcompensating, it looks differently. Remember what Saul did back when we studied Saul the past couple weeks. It says in 1 Samuel 15, verse 12, early the next morning, Samuel went to find Saul. Someone told him, Saul went to the town of Carmel to set up what does that say? A monument to himself. A monument to himself. Then he went on to Gilgal. He felt an insecurity. And so what did Saul do? He tried to overcompensate. He tried to build himself up. He set up a monument unto himself. He wanted everybody to not see his insecurity, but to see how great he really was. And we've all seen this play out in different situations. You meet that one person who always tries to top your story, tries to build a monument to themselves. They say, oh, you speak Spanish. That's great. That's cute. That's great. I speak Spanish, Portuguese, and Latin, and German, and Jamaican, and Chinese, and Mandarin, and Pig Latin. But, that's great that you just speak Spanish as your second language. I actually started speaking Spanish as an infant and then taught it in my own charter school that I self-funded by myself. They always kind of make up all these kind of things. And I don't want to belittle these kind of people. But, sometimes... because I'll share my own story in a moment. But sometimes, you'll run across these people, and Krista and I, we remember this one gal that we met, and she just always talk about herself. I'm so good with horses, she'd say. I'm so good with horses. She'd go on and on. People just bring me their horses to take care of the horses. I'm like the horse whisperer. I'm the original horse whisperer. Starts going on. I can train them. I can break them. I can do it all. People come from all over to bring me their horses. Wow, that's very interesting. Yeah, but I wish I had more time for it because I'm really busy with my job. It's a very important job, very important, very busy. Got a lot of things going on, a lot of people reporting to me. I'm busy all the time with my job. I'm just so busy. Oh, wow. But I still make time to play cello. This is a true story that I'm telling you guys. I still make time to play cello. Oh, you play cello? Yeah. I don't know if I'm very good, but the conductor in my orchestra says I'm very good. I'm very good. I'm like, wow, that's great. And they could just go on. It's thing after thing after thing. And they're trying to build a monument to themselves. They feel insecure, so they feel like they got to rise up. They got to overpower. They got to overcompensate. And I do this too. One thing that I get insecure about is what people think I might do during a work week. Because so many times throughout my life, everybody comes up to me and says, so what do you actually do during the week? And they'll just be baffled, what do you actually do? I remember this kid down in Iowa where we pastored before. He came up to me and said, Pastor Mike, I want to be just like you. I said, oh, wow, thank you. He's like, yeah, I want to be a pastor. I'm like, no kidding. That's great. He's like, yeah, because that way I only have to work on Sunday mornings, and then I can just turkey hunt all the rest of the week. And I think, hey, that's great. But seriously, one thing I feel insecure about is what people might think I do during my work week. So sometimes I just overcompensate. I try to even work more. And then my family life gets suffered. And some of the other men in the room, you might know what I'm talking about. There's something within us men that we were created to work back in the garden. God says, take dominion over the earth. This is your responsibility, Adam. And so men, it's just ingrained into us to work. And sometimes we find our identity by that. And sometimes when we feel like our boss or whoever might not be thinking that we work enough, we overcompensate. And we work even too much. I remember just a couple weeks ago, Paul Peterson, we were playing phone tag a little bit, and I left him a voicemail. I said, Paul, you can call me back anytime. I said this, right now I'm going to the hospital to do a hospital visit, but you can call me anytime. And I hung up the phone, and I thought to myself, why did I say that? And I thought, it's because I'm insecure. I want Paul to know that I'm not just driving around, I'm going to the hospital. I'm working here. And it's like I'm trying to overcompensate. And it's subtle, isn't it? I mean, we all might do this. I hope you relate to me in some sort of way. It's subtle, but it points back to this insecurity. It points back to this insecurity. Here's the third thing I want to say this morning is that everyone is insecure. Everyone is insecure. We would look at Moses and say, really, Moses? Like, Moses, I mean, you're going to be insecure? I mean, come on. Like, think about your life, Moses. You were miraculously spared. While Pharaoh was killing all the other Hebrew boys, your life was being spared. I mean, God has his hand on you. Really, Moses? You had perks that nobody else had. You were raised in the palace. You had an education like no other. Really, Pharaoh? We'd look at Pharaoh. Really, Pharaoh? You're going to be insecure? I mean, you had power, prestige, you had servants, you had influence, you had wealth. Really, Saul? You're going to be insecure? You had a calling like no other. You were the first anointed king by God. Really, you're going to be insecure? But it doesn't matter how rich or how powerful or how anything you are. We all have this insecurity within us. And I don't point that out so that you are once again reaffirmed of how insecure you are. I point that out because I think we all need to realize as we interact with other people that we're all just insecure. So when you're interacting with your boss and he starts to put the thumb down, you can just say, hey, he just feels insecure in this moment. I need to do something to help build him up, to help show him that he doesn't have to be insecure. 1 Thessalonians 5 says, so encourage each other and build each other up, just as you are already doing. We encourage each other. Your employees, they're insecure. So encourage them. You're doing a great job with this project. Your neighbors are insecure. Your kids are insecure. Build them up. Your grandkids are insecure. Your husband is insecure. He's insecure. You might see him as someone who withdraws or someone who overcompensates, but he's just an insecure guy. Build him up. Your wife, she's insecure. And sometimes these can just be subtle things. Like my wife, she's always wanted to do a garden. And so she's always wanted to do a garden, but, Krista, where are you? Okay. She's always wanted to do a garden, but she's never had great success in doing the garden, okay? And so sometimes I would tease her, like, oh, Krista, you got your green thumb on, or is it your black thumb? You know, and I'm teasing her. She said she wants to grow cantaloupe. And I said, Krista, if anybody can do it, it's you, babe. You know, and so I'm kind of teasing her. And she just pulled me aside one time. She said, Mike, this might sound so small, but I look at all these other moms, I look how they're growing these beautiful gardens and things like that, and I look at my garden and how it always dies, and I feel a little insecure about it. She's like, I just need you to build me up. I just need you to build me up. And so whether it's gardens or even their own body, women, they feel insecure. And if you look at the media they're watching, I mean, they're bound to feel insecure from times to times. We need to build them up. But it's not just women who might feel insecure about their body, it's men as well. And Rodney, when he preaches on this insecurity topic, he might talk more about this. But even us men, we can feel insecure. So we need our wives to say, like, your muscles are the biggest. I've looked from far to wide. Your muscles are the biggest, you know? So quick story about me. I've come from this long line of Osterbauers who have just these awesome genetics, you know, and great genes. But one thing that most Osterbauers have is a large nose, okay? My grandpa and his dad, so my great-grandpa, they would have like the largest noses in all of Minnesota. I'm telling you, these things were so big. My dad used to say that they could put whole rolls of quarters up their nose. Like they didn't need to go to the bank, they just put them right up their nose. And I'm not advocating smoking or anything like that. This was just my dad's joke. But he would always say that his dad could light up a cigarette or something, not that he smoked, but a cigarette in a rainstorm because it just acted like a big canopy, you know? And so great genes. But I always thought that it like skipped over me. You know, I thought like, praise the Lord, I didn't get Grandpa Ray's nose, you know? Until one day, Krista and I, we were just dating, so this is like 9 years ago, and her brothers, they're much younger at this time. And I remember we were opening presents on Christmas, and one of her brothers looked up at me and said, "You've got a bigger nose, don't you?" And I said, "What?" Like, no, I don't. And from then on, it was just downhill. Everywhere I would go, I'd be cross-eyed, looking at my nose, looking in the mirror like, is it bigger? It's like when you go to the eye doctor, and he says, just so you know, one eye sits a little bit lower than the other one, but it doesn't matter. And then you walk out like, am I some sort of monster? You're thinking you're just totally insecure. And so us guys, it doesn't fade away. Down in Iowa, this one sweet old lady, she was admiring one of our kids who had just been born, and she said to us, "Your kids are the sweetest kids. They are so cute. They look just like their dad." And I said, "Thank you." And then she says to my wife, "Praise the Lord, they didn't get his nose, though." And I thought, what? Okay, you don't have to pity me, and this is why. Because Krista, she builds me up. I mean, she talks about me all the time. She says, "Mike, you are so good looking. Mike, I love your nose." And as we get older and your nose even continues to grow, I'm going to love it even more. I'm going to love it even more. Someday I'm going to be preaching up here, and I won't have to use my hands to turn my notes. I'll just like Pinocchio out here. No, but seriously, I'm a little insecure about it. But I'm not that insecure about it because my wife, she builds me up. We all know that everybody is insecure, everybody. And so how are you interacting with them? How are you interacting with your boss, your employees, your coworkers, your neighbor, your kids, your grandkids, your spouse? Because it makes a difference. It makes a difference. We need to build them up. I want to invite the worship team on up. We're actually going to go into a time of communion here this morning. So to give you a heads up on that, and you can begin to prepare your hearts. But I was thinking about Moses, what are some of the roots of your insecurities? And when I speak on Moses again, I'll touch this a little bit more. But I was thinking about Moses, what are your roots of insecurity? And I was reading this story, and I was thinking about how the whole time Moses is talking to God through a bush. I mean, just think about that for a moment. He's talking to God through a bush. And notice some of the things that are happening. Moses, he doesn't know what's going on. At first, he doesn't know that it's God speaking to him. God has to say, "I'm the God of your father, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob." Oh, yeah. And then at that moment, Moses, he hides his face from the Lord. He gets insecure. I really think that Moses' relationship with the Lord, it was never really there at this point in the story. I mean, he knew of God. He knew that he was a Hebrew by birth. He knew of the God of the Hebrews. He knew the stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But he never really had a deep, sincere relationship with God. There'd always be like this barrier in between. He'd always just be speaking to God remotely or through this bush. And friends, you will always be insecure if you are not right with God, if you are not in good fellowship with God, if you are not in a good friendship with God. And here's the rest of the story of Moses. This is when I think it really turned around for Moses. Exodus chapter 33, verse 10 says this: "Whenever the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the entrance of the tent, they all stood and worshipped, each at the entrance of their tent. The Lord would speak to Moses." What's that say? Face to face. No more bush. It's grown to that. It's a deeper, more intimate relationship than that. Face to face, as one speaks to a friend.
You just listened to a message from Root River Community Church. For more information about our church or how to make Jesus the Lord of your life, visit our website at rootriver.org.